We've been told since we were children that space travel is fundamentally about the throw. You want to go up? Throw something down really fast. It's Newton's third law, the bedrock of our modern world. Action and reaction. If you are pushing against a chemical propellant or atmospheric air, you simply don't move. But what if that entire foundation is just a very high-quality fence we built around our own ignorance? What if there's a way to move mass without pushing it at all, using something as common and ubiquitous as an electric field? Today I want to take you on a journey through one of the most controversial frontiers in modern physics. We're going to look at the pedigree of Dr. Charles Buhler, the man claiming to have discovered what he calls a new force. Then we'll dive into the specific mechanics of his Exodus Propulsion Technologies and why it makes every aerospace engineer on Earth lose sleep. Finally, we'll examine the wall he's currently hitting. A scientific stalemate where some see a revolution and others see a very sophisticated magic trick. Let's start with the man himself, because in science, pedigree is often used as both a shield and a sword. Charles Buhler isn't some basement hobbyist trying to build a warp drive out of toaster parts. He spent time at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, specifically within the electrostatics and surface physics laboratory. Think about that environment for a second. That is where impossible things are prototyped every day. It's a place defined by extreme precision and the mastery of invisible forces: electricity, magnetism, radiation. When someone from those halls walks out and says they found something new, it carries a weight that a YouTube influencer simply doesn't have. Buhler isn't claiming to just make rockets slightly more efficient. He is making a claim so massive it borders on the heretical. Through his company, Exodus Propulsion Technologies, he asserts that they have identified a new force. This force allegedly allows for propellantless thrust, the ability to move through space using only electricity as an input. However, it is crucial to note that there is currently zero peer-reviewed evidence or scientific consensus supporting the existence of this force. In fact, many mainstream physicists argue such a claim contradicts our fundamental understanding of motion. Imagine the implications of that. If you don't need to carry tons of chemical fuel, your rockets get smaller. They get faster. You can stay in orbit longer. It's not just a better way to go to Mars, it is an end to orbital mechanics as we currently understand them. We would move from the era of combustion to the era of pure field manipulation. But here's where the friction starts, and it's a jagged, uncomfortable piece of reality. To believe Buhler, you have to accept that he has somehow bypassed Newton's third law. In our current consensus physics, if there is no mass leaving the back of your craft, there is no reason for it to move forward. It's like trying to walk on ice while pushing against nothing. You just slide or stay put. Buhler's claim suggests that his electric fields are interacting with something we haven't mapped. Yet perhaps a localized manipulation of space-time, or an unobserved interaction between electricity and gravity itself. This is why the outcast genius narrative is so incredibly compelling here. We see this pattern often. A researcher moves away from the consensus because they believe they've seen something the rest of us are too blinded by tradition to notice. It's the classic trope of the man who sees through the veil. But in science, that veil is usually just called peer review. And this brings us to our first major hurdle, the replication problem. To date, no independent outside lab has been able to replicate Exodus Propulsion's results using their specific parameters. In the world of science, it worked in my garage as a start. It works every time for everyone else is the goal. Without replication and peer review validation, we are stuck in a black box. Skeptics, and there are many high-level ones, argue that what Buhler sees as a new force, he might actually be seeing measurement errors. They point to things like interaction with the Earth's magnetic field, thermal expansion of the components, or even tiny vibrations in the testing equipment being misinterpreted as thrust. It's a classic ghost in the machine scenario. When you are looking for something revolutionary, your brain and your instruments can sometimes find it even when it isn't there. History is littered with these stories. People claiming to have achieved perpetual motion or anti-gravity often end up being brilliant engineers who are just very good at measuring their own mistakes as breakthroughs. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment, because that is the only way to truly investigate this. Why would a man with NASA-level experience spend his life chasing something so potentially fraudulent? Perhaps he isn't lying, but rather, the consensus is simply incomplete. We know that general relativity and quantum mechanics don't currently play well together. There's a massive hole in our understanding of how gravity actually works at its most fundamental level. If Buhler has found even a tiny crack in that wall, it would be the greatest discovery since the atom was split. If he succeeds, if an independent lab can finally get their hands on his data and see those numbers hold up, the consequences are staggering. It wouldn't just be a new engine. It would trigger a global gold rush for propellantless technology. Every rocket design from SpaceX to NASA's SLS will become obsolete overnight, rendered as primitive as the steam engines of the 1800s. We are currently in that uncomfortable middle ground where we don't know which side of history he sits on. Is he a visionary who has seen past our current limitations, or is he just very good at using the language of physics to sell a dream? It's that tension, that specific waiting period, that makes this so fascinating. We are watching a live experiment in human ambition in the limits of our current knowledge systems. It's not just about whether his engine works, it's about what we do when someone tells us the rules we've lived by for 300 years might be wrong. At this point, I want to ask you something. If you were an investor with enough capital to change the world or lose it all in an afternoon, would you bet on the man who says he broke physics? Or would you stick with the millions of years of established science that say you can't? There's no easy answer, and maybe that's the point of the investigation. We live in a world where we crave certainty, but some of our greatest leaps forward happened because someone was brave enough to look at a wall and ask if it was actually there. Buhler is currently standing in that spotlight, waiting for the world to decide which story they believe more. Is he the next Einstein or just another ghost in the machine? For now, we have to keep watching the data, because if those sensors are right, everything changes.